Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me for another episode of my show where I speak to entrepreneurs in South Africa. I'm very excited today to be speaking to Opperman. He and I have been friends for some years in the virtual space, and I'm very excited that today I'm actually going to speak to him in person so that we can get to know a little bit more about his amazing creative business that he runs. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Robin. Robin, if you can please tell us what your business is and how you started it.
First of all, thank you very much for including me in your amazing program. In terms of the business that we run, I'm the creative director of umcebodesign, and umcebo means treasure in Zulu. So originally we started off our life as a non-profit organization, and the whole idea was that you could come and dip into this treasure chest and you could find your sort of true potential, and that we'd help you to expose that. And I'm sort of quite a peculiar beast in that I'm actually a qualified maths teacher, but I've just always been interested in art in my spare time. So I was actually offering maths lessons at home, and the principal of a special needs school came to bring her son for maths lessons, saw my artwork, and she said to me, "How would you feel about coming to volunteer as an art teacher?" And I got on the bus with my sandwich and off I went to the school. And I loved it so much that I ended up being offered a job. I became a head of department, and I eventually won a national teaching award, which, besides bragging about them, what it allowed me to do is it allowed me to kind of think a bit out the box. And we started looking at ways for the students to express themselves creatively, but also to earn some money. So my sort of business began really as a kind of experiment in my classroom. It kind of grew and grew over a 13-year period, and eventually kind of grew to the point where it was actually growing beyond the confines of a classroom. And it was almost problematic to keep it within a school because it was now a money-generating entity. So I left my teaching job. And I announced to the world that I was off to go and build chandeliers with the community. So everyone in teaching thought that I was certifiable. But I found that once I actually committed to the process and I gave up my teaching job, I could focus my full creativity on taking what we did and turning it into a money-generating enterprise. And we ran for a great number of years as a non-profit. We received funding from Old Mutual. And then eventually Old Mutual said to us that they wanted us to basically become self-sustaining and to become a number of small self-sustaining social enterprises. So what I did was I broke off into a business, and so did a number of the crafters. And I established a small studio of my own. And obviously, given my non-profit background, I still do a vast number of community projects. But our focus is really on making sure that we can have a lot of fun, that we can hopefully make amazing things. And one of the things that artists tend to shy away from, that we can pay our bills.
That's such an amazing service that you're offering. I know a lot of artists really struggle with crossing that divide between doing what they love and actually making money off what they love. So that's an amazing service that you offer. I also find your story very, very interesting because you've transitioned your journey through so many different models. There aren't a lot of entrepreneurs out there who have made as many transitions in a lifetime as what you have. And I think that's quite an amazing thing. You must have really awesome learning to share with your students.
You know, I think one of the lessons I share with them is because I think when you're young, you kind of are permanently looking for a sort of rule book that's going to give you the secrets to how to get ahead. And I think the advantage of getting older is that I've realized that all the things that have happened to me, I would be lying to you if I said I planned them. Basically, what I did was I kind of kept myself open to the possibilities. And I think also one of the things you have to overcome as creative people, we tend to be undervalued in society. And as a result of that, we lack a lot of self-confidence. And I think one of my biggest challenges was to actually realize that what I do for a living is important, that it brings value not only to me, but to other people and to the society around me. And to also, you know, it's funny with artists, if you mention money, it's like you've thrown a bomb into the room. You know, everyone wants to run away. And I think one of the things I've learned, and I'm still on that journey, is that as creative people, we've got to feel, I wouldn't even say entitled, I think we've got to feel justified in claiming rewards for the things that we make and the joy and the pleasure that we bring into people's lives.
Yes. I actually had a very interesting conversation once. I was sitting at a seminar next to a journalist, and we were talking about this tension that seems to exist out there, that people don't acknowledge artists and their value. And I kind of probed him a little bit about why he felt that way. And he launched straight into, well, artists don't study at university. And I said to him, but that's such hogwash, because I know many artists who go to university for a very long time and study to do what they do. That doesn't wash with me. What else? You know, what else? And when he dug deeper, he actually couldn't articulate a genuine reason why he felt so strongly that artists should work for free. So I think it's part of our role as artists to debunk that myth for people out there by actually standing on our value and saying, you know what, I am worth it, and you should be paying me as much as anybody else out there who charges for their time and their skills. It's appalling to me.
So. I also think, you know, one of the things we share, because we get a lot of students from the local universities, ranging right through from the fine art department to the PR department, to come and do internships for us. And I think one of the things that we say to them is, with the service that you offer, you've obviously got to, even if you have to educate your clients on the value of your service, it's an important thing. But above all else, you've got to make sure that you give them a service that's worth buying. So when you make a piece of artwork, only use the best materials. The reason why people go and buy Murano chandeliers is because of the quality of the glass and the quality of the actual manufacture and that. And I think it's something that, as much as we need to interrogate society and how society values us, I think we need to interrogate ourselves and say constantly to ourselves, am I doing my best? Am I really pushing this design and this product to a point where I'm 100% happy with it? In other words, give the client a very good reason to buy from you.
I find this quite interesting, because I've seen some of your chandeliers that are made of upcycled resources like bottle caps. So how do you cross that divide? Because surely your customers say to you, well, this is made with a recycled resource. Your resources cost you nothing. Why should we pay you?
Well, I think the word that I'd use to kind of convince them when it comes to recycled materials is transformation. Okay. The material might be freely available, but I think the secret to it making a good product is that you successfully transform it. And sometimes that transformation is very labor intensive. And I think sometimes finding the right recycled materials, you know, behind every recycled chandelier, these 10 failed chandeliers that you had to make in order to find out just exactly what would and wouldn't succeed as a chandelier. And I think it's telling people that really what they are paying for is the fact that you've had to take this material that would normally be a throwaway. And I think the interesting thing with recycled materials is that the very thing that makes them dangerous for the environment is the thing that makes them a very good material for something like a chandelier. That hardiness and that durability, providing it's been used in the right context and it's been transformed properly, that chandelier will last forever. And I think that's what we need to educate them about, because otherwise people, as you rightly say, they'll say to you, well, you've taken a collection of rubbish and you've put a light bulb in the middle of it. And I think there's a huge burden on us to make sure that we give them a piece of work that they say, wow, and then later on they discover it's recycled. Okay. Because if they can see that it's recycled right from the get-go, then you haven't really achieved what I think is, obviously a cable tie is a cable tie and you'll be able to identify it as such. But I think when they see the chandelier as they're approaching it, that immediate response should be wow, because what they're then saying is you made a beautiful object, and you can then tell them the interesting story about the transformation of the materials that led up to that object, but you can tell them afterwards.
Those are such valuable insights. Thank you. And how do you go about actually educating your customers? Is it about a conversation? Is it about getting the right reading in front of them? How do you do that?
I think what we do is, because, even just using recycled materials is a wonderful opportunity to develop very deep and meaningful relationships with the community around you. So what we do is we put adverts in the local newspapers, we do interviews in the local newspapers, and we ask people, because people are actually very keen. They realize that the planet's under threat from these mountains of plastic, and people are very keen to do something. But often recycling and recycling programs have got a lot of politics attached to them, and your recycling isn't collected, or you find out it's actually going into a hole in the ground. So people are they feel almost quite paralyzed in that they're generating these massive amounts of plastic and they don't know what to do with them. So what we do is we say to people, collect, this is what we're looking for. And another important aspect is to say to people, for example, with milk containers, take the milk container after you've finished, rinse it out with water, turn it upside down, and above all else, leave the lid off, because otherwise it develops a terrible odor, which never ever get rid of in that. But I think in the process of using recycled materials and getting the community to collect and to bring to you, you develop quite close personal relationships with people. And often those people go on to be your clients. So besides making them a cup of tea and having a good chin wag with them, they kind of come along and they see what you're working on, and they become involved in the process of maybe a chandelier that you're working on for another client. And in the process, they say to you, well, I would like one of those, or I would like that, but maybe in red plastic. So I think it's a very organic process in that besides having a good kettle and plenty of milk and sugar and tea bags, I think if you invite people into your space and you give them a sense of what the process is, and you get them excited about the fact, often people say recycled materials are really devalued. And I think that they're this incredible resource that's literally around every corner. I mean, people often ask us, we'll make quite a big piece, and people will say, well, you must have thousands of people collecting for you. And I'll say, all of that plastic in that corner came out of 5 households in a week.
Wow. Wow.
So, and what we often do is with pieces that we make, we kind of develop statistics around them where we'll say, this piece has got so many bottle tops in it, and we use so many Coke bottles as well, because I think it gives people almost like a sense of relief where they say to themselves, well, I can see that there is a possible, there are lots of ways of waste management, but creative waste management actually is a viable option.
I love that. What a great story. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that really the key to unlocking this whole thing is actually building good relationships.
Hugely. I think with the community, with your clients, and I think also with other organizations doing similar things to what you're doing. One of the things we teach the students is be nice to other people and share with other people, because we've got a whole network of organizations that work in the craft sector and the decor sector. And what they do is, if they get a donation of a particular thing and there's too much for them, they will contact us and they'll say, I've got 40 packets of white beads. Would you be able to use them for a particular project? So we tend to work on that kind of basis, because otherwise you're so busy fighting each other that, viability relies on us all standing together and kind of marching in a common direction. So for us, that kind of sense of community, and I think that's why we miss the Design Indaba being gone so much. The Design Indaba Expo was a great opportunity for all of us from around the country to kind of get together, and while we were setting up our stands, kind of check in. You almost had this kind of design family. But that said, I think now in the age of social media and with wonderful things like Zoom, I think we can develop very deep and meaningful and especially mutually beneficial relationships that can empower us as a sector, and that can also make us bulletproof in quite a big storm that's heading towards us. The world is changing and the world is becoming more challenging for everyone. And I think we're going to need to have our own houses in order, and we're going to have our tribe with us. And I think it's important that we think in those kind of sector ways.
What do you think is the underlying cause of the friction between people, that they don't want to work together and that they resist working together?
I think I think really in our society, there's we are brought up on a diet of TV shows with very aggressive people in the business world putting it out there and basically having to stand on other people to get somewhere. And I think one of the things I've learned in my 56 years on the planet is that there's no greater gift to yourself and your own personal energy and the energy of your business than actually reaching out to other people. It's a very, very, very important thing. And even if it's that you read on social media that somebody says we're going through a hard time, and you just send them a personal message. Because similarly, when you're going through a hard time, they will reach out to you. And I think often in the world we live in, that's interpreted as a sign of weakness. I think it's probably one of the biggest strengths that you can ever have. And I think also in the sector that we work in, integrity. I think one of the things that Design Indaba always taught me is how important it is that you have the respect of your colleagues, that you are somebody who's known as playing with an open hand, that you don't steal other people's designs, and
Yes.
all of those things, that there's a form of that no matter what sector you operate in. Because I've complained to my friends who are lawyers and doctors and all that, and they say, don't think that only happens in the creative sector.
Yes.
Doctors have their research stolen and all sorts of things. So
Yes.
I think it's just that thing of playing with an open hand and thinking out of the sort of boundaries of your immediate four walls and kind of reaching out to people, because the benefits that you will get in return, you can't even begin to measure.
Yes, yes. I listened to a very interesting talk the other day where somebody was saying that in this digital age, we absolutely have to let go of ownership of any idea, because there are so many ideas out there on the internet now. You can't claim to own anything anymore. So I think that can be quite a strain for especially young designers. I know certainly when I was much younger, it was very, very difficult for me to cope with it, emotionally when I felt somebody had stolen my work. But now that I'm older, I'm more accustomed to that kind of thing. And also, I think becoming a teacher has kind of tipped that whole notion on its head. Because as soon as you teach, you're inviting people to copy you. For me, as a
Well, I think it's a two-edged sword as well, where if you develop a new product and no one copies it, then you know you've developed a pretty crappy product. So I think it's a balancing act. It's about developing a really wonderful product
Yes.
and getting it out there and getting your orders before somebody does copy it. But ultimately, if you send it out there and there's just crickets, then you know that you need to go back to the drawing board.
That's a fabulous insight. So, what do you enjoy most about your job?
I think the thing that I enjoy the most about it is that every day I come home and I really have learned something new about myself and what I'm capable of. Be it that I've found a new material. For example, we'll have somebody will come to our studio and they'll say, I've got a box of lenses for sunglasses, and they're like 400 plastic lenses. What can you do with them? And what we'll do is we'll take those materials and we'll experiment with them, and we'll make a chandelier, we'll make a wind chime. So we kind of constantly encountering new materials and new people and new influences. So I think with my job, it's always exciting. You know, this would have been the job that if I was working in the corporate sector, I would have been working and waiting to retire so I could have done this.
That's so wonderful. That's wonderful. Maybe you'll encourage more people, inspire more people to leave corporate earlier.
Well, I think also what we try and do, and the reason why we work with a lot of students, you know, when a child goes home and says, I want to be an artist, then it's like a death in the family, you know. And what we're trying to encourage students who are going to study to be artists and their parents to think about is that those skills that they are learning have the very real possibility of being translatable into products and items that can earn them a very viable and a very happy living. And that those children should be encouraged. You know, if that really, because these days being an artist is not an easy choice. And if a child goes home and says, Mom and Dad, I want to be an artist, this is not an easy thing for them, the news to, you know, if they go home and say, I want to be an accountant, then there's balloons and champagne.
Yes.
And I think what we're trying to say to people is we're not lying to them. We're not saying it's easy. But then I think we're moving into a world where nothing is going to be terribly easy. I think it's going to be about working in new and interesting ways, and finding ways of strategizing and working your way around problems. And I think what we're saying to the students is be flexible. If I could sum up the one thing I've learned about what I do is flexibility is the best asset you can have. If you're one of those people who says, no, I'm sorry, I only do that, your company's got a very short shelf life. But if your vision is a broad, creative vision, then you can survive the toughest of times and you can still have fun.
Yes. Do you feel that the creative industries actually offer more flexibility in terms of shifting business models? I know for myself, I've essentially kind of done a similar thing for the last 27 years. And yet I've created very, very different business models out of very simple skills. Do you think that there's actually more scope in the creative industries for that kind of morphing and changing to create the kind of lifestyle you want?
I think so. I think a lot of creative enterprises start their life as non-profits. You know, my opinion, and I know it's not a very popular one, is that funding bodies and funding agencies don't understand their role properly. So what they do is when a nonprofit comes into the world, the first thing that they get told is you need to become self-sustaining. And I think in some cases becoming self-sustaining is an important thing. But then I think there will always be, for example, in the creative sector, there will always be people who don't want to run a company of their own. They will say, I want to work for a small enterprise or a non-profit. So I think there is a role for non-profits that start up and stay non-profits for the rest of their lives. And I think one of the problems we've got at the moment is that the funding agencies and that see it as their job to wean you off funding and to turn you into businesses. So I think that possibility is being chopped away all the time, because we had lots of crafters who said, I don't want to run a company of my own. I want to work for an entity. I want someone else to go and get the orders. I want someone else to do the books. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think like in our sector, like any sector, there are people with different hopes and dreams and aspirations and different skill sets. I think the beauty of our sector is that if we think kind of out of the box with it, I think you can be whoever you want to be. You know, I went to a trade show in Germany, and it always interested me to look around at the people who were on the stand from South Africa with me. There was a Karoo farmer's wife. There was myself. There were people who had left the corporate world to start up creative enterprises. And I think the beauty of the sector that we operate in, I think if you think in a generous and sharing way, I think you can basically be anything you want to be, and there's always a home for you. And you will provide a very valuable service you know, to a group of people. And often with our creative sector, we help some of the poorest and some of the most marginalized people who literally take that work and that money from that order and they go and buy food with it. You know, so I think we occupy a very important role. And I think the important thing is that we think of ourselves as a very viable sector, and that we think of ourselves as being very flexible and very adaptable.
I love hearing your story of how you help the most vulnerable in the community. That's so beautiful. I once had a business coach who grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me and said to me, I wish you'd get off the bleeding edge, Melanie. And yeah. I said to him, if you take that away from me, there's no meaning in my life. Do you feel the same way?
I think the thing for me is one of the things we've learned about marginalized crafters is that they don't want people to feel sorry for them. They're very proud of what they're doing, and what they actually want is they want to earn money, but they want people to acknowledge the skill that they bring to the party. You know, when I initially started the project in my classroom, and I was working with severely mentally handicapped students, and that's quite a broad title. So it includes quite a diverse range of skills and abilities. But the beauty of the work that we were doing is that you could plug that diverse range of skills into one product, because you could match the person with something that they could do and that they really enjoyed doing. But I think one of the things we learned is that the students not only got money out of that, but they felt a tremendous sense of pride. And I think one of my mantras to this day is I never want to rob anyone of that pride. I never want to feel sorry for someone. As much as people come to work and you come to know them as friends and they share harrowing stories with you, I never want to deny them that respect that I feel for them and what they do, and I want them to know that.
That's so beautiful. I see we're coming to the end of our time, so I'm going to wrap it up before we get cut short. So firstly, I'd like to thank you very much for sharing your valuable insights and your wisdom with us. I feel super blessed to have had this time to talk to you. Do you have any parting comments before we close this off?
I think given the age that we're living in with the coronavirus and all the navel gazing that we've all been doing, I think one of the things, I spoke to a good friend of mine the other day who's very familiar with the craft sector, and who's given me a lot of very useful advice that I've applied and it's helped me in my business. And I think one of the things she said to me, and it would be one of the things I share with people, is find your light and take your light out into the world.
I love that.
And I think that is my mantra. And I think for the remaining time I have on this planet, I will be constantly looking for my light and taking it out into the world.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much.